and welcome back to Cityline. We are zooming live from my kitchen, and we have a great hour ahead of us. Later on in the hour, we'll be talking with Kareem Candy World Orchestra. He's got some great classes and great date nights that you need to hear about. Also, the Model Train Festival at the Washington State History Museum is back. Juliana is here to talk with us about collectors and how you can bring your family and have a great time during this holiday season. Marisa Buss, our information officer at Tacoma Public Library, will be here to talk about a feasibility study that they are doing that they need your help with. Our pet of the week will be here, and with me right now are two people that I swear their angel wings are so big that even if we could see them, you couldn't get them into their little Zoom frame. So please join me in welcoming Lori Davenport. You are the Director of Development and Outreach of Tacoma Probono Community Lawyers. Lori, welcome back.
Thank you, Amanda. Really happy to be here today.
Great to have you here. And you brought with you the peanut butter to your jelly. Mr. Mark Marzol, you are the managing attorney of the Housing Justice Project and Tacoma Pro Bono Community Lawyers. Mark, welcome back.
Hi, Amanda. Good to see you.
Good to see you, too. So, Lori, please remind us what Tacoma Pro Bono Community Lawyers does in our community, because it's a lot and it's all good.
And Tacoma Pro Bono Community Lawyers is the free legal aid provider for all of Pierce County, not just Tacoma. And we call it pro bono because not only because it's free, but because it's for the public good. We really try to address issues that are paramount for people right now. And that's why we're really into housing, because that's on everybody's mind right now.
Yes.
There's a lot of insecurity. We've got a homeless crisis. We have a lot of people facing eviction. So that's what we're here to talk about today. We also help with all kinds of other issues, as long as it's not criminal defense. You can fill out our online intake form, and hopefully we'll be able to help you.
Absolutely. So, Mark, we're still living with the pandemic. Last I checked this morning, Omicron was still alive and well. But it's true that is it true that the eviction moratorium is over? That's my first question. And can tenants legally be evicted from their housing provider? That's my second question.
Oh, a two-part question. So to answer the first part, yes, the eviction moratorium is over. We're all going through this pandemic, as you just mentioned. We're not out of it yet. But unfortunately, the moratorium ended. It ended in the end of June of 2021. So during the summer. And in its place was something called the Bridge Proclamation, which kind of transitioned us into this period where we're at now. The Bridge Proclamation ended on October 31st. So ever since November, we have been back into evictions. However, there is one big caveat there, and this was expected. The legislature expected the moratorium to end, and so they changed a lot of laws, landlord-tenant laws, to better protect tenants coming out of the moratorium, which is now over.
So, Mark, what protections are there for tenants who may be facing eviction?
Yeah, so the legislature made some significant changes, particularly when it comes to non-payment of rent. So now landlords, if a tenant is behind on rent during that moratoria period, then landlords are required to offer tenants a repayment plan, the opportunity to get caught up in rent. If the tenant is unable to come up with a repayment plan, landlords are also required to go through a process called the Eviction Resolution Pilot Program, which uses local mediators to try to resolve the issue before it reaches court. Those were two of the major changes. A third one is the way landlords can end a tenant's tenancy is way different than it ever was before. Now landlords need one of 16 specific reasons to end a tenancy. No longer can landlords just say, I want you to move at the end of the month. They have to have a good reason to ask you for that, one of the 16 different reasons. So there's been a lot of tenant protections that the legislature put in place, knowing that the moratorium was going to end.
Yes, and so many of those protections also cover, institutional racism and redlining and those types of things. So it was time for us to revamp those laws. So Mark, If I am a tenant who is watching and I'm behind in rent, what are some of the most important things that I need to know?
Well, the first thing you should know is that there's options. There's options for you. And landlord-tenant law in Washington state has become complicated, and you need to reach out to legal aid to try to get an idea of how you could solve this particular problem. The second thing is that you need to be aware of is Pierce County has a substantial amount of rental assistance that's still available. Tens of millions of dollars of rental assistance have already been given out to tenants here in Pierce County, and there's still tens of millions remaining to be given out. So there are options, but you have to be able to explore these options, and you have to know which one works best for your particular situation, which means that you should reach out to legal aid and talk through your options, see how you could stay in your housing, despite the fact that you may be behind on rent from the moratorium period.
So if I've received an eviction notice and, I can just even imagine someone coming home and there's a notice on their door, how that would feel, what they would do with it, and how it would just emotionally affect them. What are some things that they need to know about being served?
Yeah, so it's a very real, very dire situation. And the first thing for any tenant in that situation to recognize is they have to start working with that situation right away. Ignoring it, forgetting about it, worrying about it, reach out for help, reach out to legal assistance, legal aid. We could talk you through what that notice means. Notices are very different. Some are able to be solved and you could stay in your housing. There's options there. Others, there's the repayment plans that are available for tenants that are behind on rent. And then the third thing is the law changed underneath it. And we're not even certain that landlords are giving proper eviction notices every time. It's entirely possible that the notice you received isn't even valid. But in order to know that, you have to talk to somebody who knows the law, which is Tacomaprobono and the Housing Justice Project.
So the website we've been showing in front of both of your beautiful faces, is that where a tenant should go to get some help or to start the process, Mark? That is, and there's links, and there's also the phone number should be posted on there, so you could call and you could leave a message, or you could go online and do an intake, meaning you plug in your information, and then one of our staff members will call you back and schedule you to speak with an attorney. And the entire world that we live in right now has gone virtual for the most part. And so we've adapted to that reality where we're able to do these kind of consultations over the phone or whether over Zoom. And on certain instances, if people don't have access to that technology, then they could come into our office and speak with an attorney as well. Oh, I love that. So Mark, what does, I have heard you mention this, right to counsel mean, and why is it important for this conversation? Yeah, so right to counsel was one of the things that the new legislative package came through, and Washington state became the first state in the nation to require courts to appoint a free attorney for low-income tenants that are facing eviction. And if you're a low-income tenant and you show up for your eviction hearing, the court has to do this. It's their job. They have to appoint you counsel. There is some income qualifiers on this, so you have to be low income. And low income basically means 200% of federal poverty guidelines, which, just to give you an estimate of what those numbers are roughly, if you're a single person living alone and you make $25,000 or less, you'll be appointed an attorney. If you have a family of four, that number goes up to about 53,000. And then it keeps on going up higher. So depending on your family size and your income, you could be appointed a free attorney that will represent you during your court hearing. Wow. Okay. So there's also that new program that helps tenants with housing problems before they're facing the eviction hearing. Is that part of the eviction resolution pilot program that you mentioned? Yeah, so we had just mentioned the right to counsel program, and it's a huge step in the right direction that when tenants show up for their eviction hearing, then they have an attorney appointed for them. But we know that there's a lot of housing issues that occur long before you get to your eviction hearing. And unfortunately, the right to counsel, the Washington state law, does not require the court to give you an attorney at that point. So recognizing that there's all these areas of law before the eviction hearing, we have ramped up our staff to be able to help tenants both before and after the eviction process. And that's what it's our homeless and eviction legal prevention team, which is, I think, has a great acronym. It's called the HELP team. Wow. So this HELP team also works with unhoused people, as you said, or those facing housing insecurity. to solve other kinds of legal issues that prevent people from getting housing, like past evictions, and also legal financial obligations, you know, in terms of like utilities and those types of things. So it's really becoming a one-stop with the help team.
Yeah, so one thing that we've really recognized is it's great to have an attorney at your eviction hearing. It's wonderful to know your legal options there. But if we're really going to address the homelessness problem, then we need to start working on reducing barriers to housing. And what we've seen so often is when somebody does have an eviction on their record, it's very difficult to secure new housing. It's hard to move. Some houses simply won't accept somebody with an eviction on their record, or they might charge higher security deposits, which make it unaffordable for somebody to move. That's what the help team is going to be focusing on, is reducing those barriers, getting rid of legal financial obligations so people aren't spending their money on something other than housing, getting rid of those evictions, on those old evictions on tenants' records, so that when they do apply for new housing, there's nothing preventing them from getting it. I think that's going to be a huge step in the right direction.
You know, and all of that leads me to think about, Lori and Mark, as Marilise Hood-Kwan would say, the conversation in the space between. Because Tacoma Pro Bono does a lot of educating through conversations with housing providers and tenants in terms of how do we make this work long term. And all of us come out of this a little better than we walked into it. So Lori, that leads me to you. With all of the changes in our landlord tenant laws and your new programs, because you now have moved over to outreach and education, what are some of the things that you're experiencing?
We're trying very hard to get the word out in the community to everyone, because these laws are very different than what we had before. Protections are very robust, but there is so much confusion on everybody's part that we have to be out there repeating over and over again, getting rid of misinformation that people have, letting people know the facts, talking about what we do. Mark he's been amazing. Talking to landlords, talking to tenants, talking to community groups, just, you know, answering questions as much as possible. Both of us are on Zoom a lot. So yes, and we're working on publishing some stuff that people can refer to. We're working on a guide for landlords and tenants both to look at, you know, what are my rights? What are my obligations? What can I do in this situation? Get it all written down so we can just refer people to it. So we're working on a lot of different levels, and that's one of the things that the help team is doing, is trying to help develop some things for people. So we are out there. If you're out there, you're a community group, you're anyone who has a question, wants to know, wants a presentation, let us know. Contact me.
I love that. So much with information changes daily, Lori. Every day we have a different science situation that we have to address. And that's already based on unhoused housing providers that they also haven't been paid. They also are not eating, and it makes it really difficult. And then you add this time of year onto it. So as we look toward 2022, are you bringing some of these programs with you, even though every day is still a new day?
We are. Thanks to the Pierce County Library System, and next year the Tacoma Public Libraries also, we're actually doing one-on-one, meeting people, answering individual questions, doing whatever we can do to get people straightened out about housing issues. So we'll look for the schedule. We'll be out. Actually, we'll be out by ourselves, just Housing Justice Project in January, and then we'll be joined again by rental assistance in February. It's a one-stop shop. It's been fun, exhausting, but we really look forward to just meeting people one-on-one, answering your questions, talking to you. The more we can get out in the community, the better. So again, if you want us in person, we can do that too.
You know, every day on Facebook, I see where the Tacomaprobono Probono has set up their tables and who's doing what. And it's kind of like a Where's Waldo today, where I get to see where you guys have gone all over the city. You two are probably the only two people I know that since this pandemic, you have become more passionate, more engaged, and more, what do I want to say here? Tender, because of the people who you are dealing with. And I want to say that doesn't happen to all of us in terms of how we orchestrate our feelings around this pandemic, but the two of you continue to be such great friends and really great citizens here in Tacoma and Pierce County. So thank you so much for all of the late nights. You were up writing briefs, you were up trying to change the law, and also following up on people who need your help. And I hope to see you much more in 2022.